Now, I am a rather cultured individual, a man of great taste, a little bit of a gamer, you might say. Now, if you know anything about Apple products, you'll know that they're not the best for gaming. Unless you like, I don't know, speedrunning Candy Crush or something. Yes, the list of games on Steam that support macOS is shorter than the script for Half-Life 3. So, it's out with the fruit bowl and in with the PC. And I've decided to jump in at the deep end, and I'm going to build one out of all of the parts that you see before me. Because how hard could it be? Right? And starting things off, we've got the chassis. And this is the Lian Air Mini. And this is essentially the Fiat 500 of computer cases. It's small, usually comes in white, and you see them absolutely everywhere. Bruh. But it is a good little case, and it fits most sizes of motherboards, power supplies, and GPUs. So there's less for me to mess up, which is always a good thing. Now this case retails for about 120 to 130 pounds here in the UK, but I picked this up on eBay for about 75 pounds. It's in perfect condition, it's just missing all of the fans that initially came in the body. But the thing is, I would have replaced those anyway, so I'll happily take the savings. And next up, we have the GPU, and this is the Gigabyte Vision 3070, and this is a fantastic mid-range card capable of 1080 and 1440p gaming. Now, buying second-hand GPUs can be a little bit risky, but I made sure to do my research. I bought from a reputable seller, and I picked this up for £300. That's half its initial retail price. So, if this works, that is a whole lot of bang for the buck. Next up, the motherboard. Yes, the motherboard. The semiconductor studded playground that's been facilitating degenerative behavior online for generations at this point. And I've chosen the ProArt B660 ATX board, which I picked up for the okay price of £230. That is the usual going price. But I also paid a man 10 whole extra British pounds to update the BIOS for me because I couldn't be bothered. But it will now accept 13th gen Intel CPUs. And talking of 13th gen Intel CPUs, here is the one that I have chosen. And the CPU, or Central Processing Unit, I know stuff, I looked it up online. This is essentially the brain of the computer. And that's actually quite funny because one of these will usually cost you about the same amount as an actual brain off the black market. Not that I've been checking or anything. And this is a Raptor Lake Intel i5 13500. It's got 14 cores and a max clock of 4.8 gigahertz. And I picked it up for £237, which is about the average retail price for this processor. And next up, we've got storage. Now, SSD stands for Services for Students with Disabilities, but since my crippling dyslexia can't be cured, we'll just stick with the term solid state drive. And I've gone for a pretty decent middle of the road 1TB Samsung 980 NVMe M.2 SSD. And this is capable of 3500 read speed and 3000 write speed. And you can pick one up for about £40. Then next up, we've got RAM, or Random Access Memory. But since DIMM slots don't actually accept 10-year-old Daft Punk albums, I went out and I bought these instead. And I've chosen two 16GB sticks of Corsair Vengeance Pro. And this is where my smooth brain really starts showing, because I stupidly thought more megahertz equals better. Which it does, except I didn't check what my CPU supported. And its max is 3200 megahertz. So you eagle-eyed viewers might have noticed that I bought 3600. So essentially what I've done is I've gone out and spent a little bit more money for no extra performance whatsoever. And if anything, this might actually cause a bit of instability in the computer. I'm not actually too sure. We're just gonna have to find out. But that's a pro gamer move right there, if you ask me. Next up, we've got the PSU, or Power Supply Unit, which is actually heavier than it looks, but this is the beating heart of any computer system. Now, my mother took one look at this thing and she said, "Oh, that looks very dangerous. Make sure not to lick it or anything." So, I guess I'll do my best not to do that. And this is the Corsair RM750. It's a white, fully modular ATX size power supply. And we all know, because it matches the color of the case, that adds at least an extra 5 FPS when gaming. It's just a fact. And not only that, it comes with a pretty bunch of white cables as well, to match the mostly white aesthetic. Next up, we've got this, the CPU cooler, or the AIO, or all-in-one system. And thank God I've got this, to cool the beast that is the mid to low range i5 processor. I'm pretty sure you could keep this thing cool by staring at it for long enough. But more cooling is better than no cooling. And look, it's got an LCD on it. And we all know cool, flashy RGB equals more FPS. It's just science. And this is the Corsair H100i Elite LCD. Now, some of you might be wondering, Johnny, why did you not buy a white one to match everything else? And the reason is I got this for a really good price. It usually retails for about £240, but I picked this up brand new and sealed for £165, which is actually cheaper than the model without the LCD. So I can get over the fact that this isn't going to be a completely white build. Continuing the theme of cooling, I've got 7 Corsair LL 120mm RGB fans, and they also come with a commander core that will help me wire all of these up. Now, that number of fans and the commander core would usually run you about £180, which is an astonishing amount of money. But I picked both of these up off a seller on eBay for about £89. I mean, sure, they were used, but they were in great condition. I just cleaned them up a little bit, and they're good to go. That's a decent bit of saving right there. That's almost 100 quid. Then I picked up 2 brand new Corsair LL 140mm RGB fans from Amazon this time for £65. And these will fit in the front of the case and will be providing most of the fresh air to help cool down this little microwave. I went with black again because I figured that, you know, since the motherboard and the AIO cooler were both black, you know, it created like this black stripe down the middle of the build, and these would be continuing that line. So I figured, you know, they'd look a bit better. But to tell you the truth, the biggest reason was they were about £5 cheaper than the white ones. There does seem to be an unusual tax on white pieces of computer hardware. I think it's probably just because there's fewer of them, but I saved £5 whole. That's all the parts that I'll be using for this build, so let's get started with actually building the thing, shall we? I am absolutely terrified. Okay. But just before we get into the build, a quick word from today's sponsor, FlexiSpot, who kindly sent me one of their E7 desks to try out. And as you'll see, it made for a perfect work surface to build my PC on, and will make for a perfect workstation moving forward. With smooth motion from 60 centimeters all the way up to a height of 125 centimeters, and a max lifting strength of 125 kilograms, which is almost twice my weight by the way, and a max static load of 165 kilograms, it's sure to cater to any and all sizes and setups. And the desk interface also comes with built-in USB, so if you want easy access to something like a phone charger, you got it. And from the 28th of August until the 1st of September, FlexiSpot will be offering up to 50% off their products, and the first 7 people to place an order after 10 AM BST on the 28th and 31st of August and the 1st of September will have their items sent to them and will also receive a full refund on their order. It's free stuff, people! So make sure to head over to their website, link down in the description, and subscribe to their site while you're over there, and you'll be in with a chance of winning a PS5. And thank you again to FlexiSpot for sponsoring this video. If I could just interrupt briefly, because although this went quite smoothly, after lowering the motherboard into the case, this is where I hit my first problem. And buying a second-hand case came to bite me, because I had the standoffs, but not the screws to attach the motherboard to the standoffs. So, one Amazon order and 1 day later, and the build is back on track. right about this moment that I'd started to wonder why I'd not plugged the pump header in before screwing the fans into the case, because now I have to jam my plastered up, clumsy fingers in between the fans and the motherboard to try and get that stuck in. And after about 5 minutes and with a little bit of work from a screwdriver, I finally managed to get it stuck in. Now, I have just learned of the superstition in the PC community that you are not supposed to close all the panels up before trying to post a computer. Now, this of course sounds like a lot of nonsense, but as you're about to see, it might have a little bit of truth to it. And I say this because when I went to turn on the computer for the first time, guess what the computer wouldn't do? You got it, turn on. Huh. But after a quick bit of troubleshooting, I'd realized that the motherboard cable had somehow come loose. So it was now time for attempt number 2. Okay, we do have a light. We've got... It's an emergency light, but it's a light. I'm going to power it on. Interesting. Well, the fans definitely shouldn't make that noise. Now, as horrific as that sounds, it was just one of the AIO cables rubbing against one of the fans, so I just pushed it out of the way. Bob's your uncle. And you might also notice that a lot of the LEDs weren't lighting up properly, but again, this was a simple fix. I thought it was a wiring issue. It turned out it was just a software issue. I needed to install the iQOO software, update the drivers, and all of the fans immediately started working. Welcome to day 3? Day 4 of the build? There's been 1 or 2 hiccups, but we're finally here. We're at the finishing line. There's only one thing left to go, and that's to test how good this thing is at gaming. Now, just before we test the gaming performance, let me go over a couple of changes I've made inside the case just to finalize the build. Number 1, I've added cable extensions to the GPU and the motherboard. Look, that Corsair PSU was an expensive piece of kit. I mean, it was over 100 quid, and those cables looked awful. They looked really, really terrible. Not only were they all like tangled and mangled, but like the GPU, it was an 8 plus, well, no, it was a 6 plus 2 pin. So I could plug the 6 in, but then I just had to leave the 2 pin just kind of hanging off. And not only that, but it was daisy chained to the 8 pin. It looked terrible, but the cable extensions have made it look a million times better. Now also, I've removed 2 of the fans from the case, and I've swapped the 2 fans that were on the radiator with 2 of the LL fans, because the ones it came with were QL. Now, all of the RGBs in the case just look a bit more cohesive. Not only that, but it would have been operating under negative air pressure inside the case because I had more exhaust than I did intake. But now I've got 4 intakes, 4 exhaust. Now you might think, well, that's neutral air pressure, which is still fine, but that's not positive. But you got to remember that the 2 fans at the front are 140mm, whereas every other fan is 120. So there is ever so slightly more intake than there is exhaust. This is good. This means less build up inside the case and slightly more optimal cooling. But here it is. Survey the magnificence. It's small, it's white, and hopefully it's going to stay cool. So allow me to present to you what I've decided to nickname the Ice Pick. Yes. You thought I was going to call it Jonny, didn't you? Small and white. That's fun. That's real funny. No, it's got a cool name. It's called the Ice... Not the Jonny isn't a cool name. God damn it. Just... Roll the B-roll. So, the good old ice pick is now going to become the workhorse behind my YouTube channel. Here's the price I paid for the whole build, and here's the price I would have paid if I'd not bought some of the parts used. And for reference, the Mac equivalent at this price point has fewer cores, although granted the M1 and M2 chips are very impressive. It has a less capable GPU, 0 display ports, only 1 HDMI port, half the RAM, half the storage, and if I actually wanted a Mac that matched the memory spec of the ice pick, it would cost an eye-watering £600 extra. Imagine paying £600 for 16 gigabytes of RAM and 500 gigabytes of storage. You could buy 6 terabytes of Samsung 990 storage and have enough money left over to then go out and buy yourself 32 gigabytes of 6400 meg DDR5 RAM. Where Apple gets their memory prices from, I have no idea, but it's hilarious. Hey, little Timmy, how much are we going to charge for 8 gigabytes of RAM? £7,000! Yeah, okay, little Timmy. Yeah, okay, well, that sounds about right. And now onto the real test, which is gaming. And I can tell you, it runs Dragon Quest VIII seamlessly. It's almost like this isn't a 20-year-old game. We're only at 30% GPU usage on a PS2 game. What? Okay, jokes aside, it's time for some actual gaming. So the most demanding game I've got as of this moment is Forza Horizon 5. And yes, I know it's pronounced Forza. Forza. Guess who's got 2 thumbs and 8 Italian though? This guy. I don't give a damn. I've said Forza since I was a kid. I am going to continue saying Forza. Remember, kids, ignorance is important. Remember that. So here we are. Extreme settings, 1080p. And I tell you what, it actually looks a lot sharper than I expected it to. It looks all right. We're averaging 125 FPS on extreme settings. That's more than usable, but let's try out 1440p. Let's see what we can do. Okay, now I'm looking at it. The difference between 1080p and 1440p is night and day. This looks insanely sharp. It looks awesome. There's not been a crazy hit to performance. I was expecting quite the dent in our FPS, but we're still averaging 105. So jumping from 1080 to 1440p, we've lost about, what, 15 frames a second? I mean, when you're still running at 105 FPS, I'll take that. And like I say, we've been gaming now for about half an hour, 40 minutes. Our GPU is sat comfortably between about 30 and 45 degrees. Super cool. Our coolant's at 34. Completely nominal. We're averaging over 100 FPS at maxed out settings at 1440p on a relatively new, I mean, this Forza 5 came out, what, last year? Year before? A pretty demanding game. What can I say? I'm over the moon. Tell you what, guys, I've caught the computer building bug. I know I've only just finished building this one, but I want to build another one. You know, if any of you out there looking for a new one, hit me up. I'll build it for you. You're going to have to pay for it, though. You know, this has been an incredibly stressful, sure, but an unbelievably rewarding experience. I now have a super capable PC sat on my desk that I built myself. It's awesome. It's so cool. And, you know, I've always been one of these guys that are like, what is up with PC users? Why are they so obsessed with temperatures and frame rates? Who the hell cares? I've been sat here, whatever I've been playing, I've been glued to the FPS reader and I've been glued to the temperature readouts. I've been like, I need to make it optimally cool and have as many frames as possible. I get it now. I get it now. I used to make fun of you guys, but I've become one of you. 2 weeks ago, I knew absolutely nothing about building PCs. Absolute zero. And now, 2 weeks later, I knew a teeny tiny bit more. No, but for real, if you're out there and you were thinking about building your own PC, but you didn't know whether to take the dive, go for it. If I can do it, so can you. I am super stupid. So I think you'll be just fine. Make sure you plan your build and obviously be careful buying secondhand parts. I'm hoping I get to build another PC someday. And if I do, I'll make sure to make a video about that. Thank you very much for watching this one. And I'll see you in the next. Take care, guys. And as always, a big shout out to the patrons and the channel members. We have the top tiers: Flunky, Pozabon, Infinite Dum Dum, Koss, Jax, David, ATS, Texas Lawman, Michael Turpia, Steve the Goat, Daggerdy69, nice, Digital EXE, and Saint Nemo. To you, the Knights of Law, I thank you for your service. The tier 2, Saeed, Dr. Melski, Yarnwich, Hadziu, Kanadogramachi, Mark Maiden, Sensei Fang, Medicant Bias, Michael S., Rich Warwick, Nastagmus, Magger and Jarek, the Grand Admiral, and Kidnapped Tiger. To each and every one of you, thank you very much. And of course, a big thank you to each and every one of the tier 1 members as well. To everyone on this list, you're the best, man. Thank you.